where you tender to the particular selected tenderers. Yeah? Sometimes what happens is you can go to a two-stage tendering strategy where you can select the contractor to do the job, not based on cost. Right? You can select the best contractor and then end up negotiating with him. So in effect, the project team has to decide how they're going to tender. They have to know what contractor selection they're going to use, what tendering strategy they're going to use, and so forth. You have to figure these things out beforehand based on the complexity of the projects. Most of the projects we have here are fairly simple, so two-stage tendering is rarely used, but it is used in some serious instances. Another variation is you can have, instead of two-stage, you can do single-stage tendering with a two-envelope system, whereby one envelope is open. The first envelope that is open is the technical tender without pricing, because this happens where quality and technical issues are so important and so tricky that, but the project may not be complex in overall, but there are some tricky issues in the tendering, and you want to make sure that the contractor who's doing it understands the project. And therefore what happens is you say, give me two envelopes. You open the first one. If the tender, you grade the tender to see if he can pass your test. Because if he understands the situation, he will submit all his documentation to see how much he can do, and then you can pick. You can pick certain tenders, or to put it in the negative, you can remove. So then the tenders you have selected to move on to the next phase is the tenders you would open, the financial tender or commercial tender. So the two envelope system, the contractor submits a technical tender, he submits a commercial tender in two separate envelopes. And you get the technical tender and you open it, you decide which contractors are good enough to open their commercial tenders, and you pick the commercial tenders. We did that the other day on one of the projects which I won't mention the name of. Right? So the disadvantages are of course, the price will have to be negotiated at a later stage. Unless you have the two envelope system. And of course, we negotiated tender strategies very simple. The single stage tender, for some reason, this is either a single source or sole source, and it does save time, and you should consider, all project teams should consider single source tendering. If it may be fairly quick to say no to it, but at the same time, sometimes there's no choice but to go with a single source or sole source tender. Once you get approval from the minister, of course. Because it has a lack of transparency in it in the selection process. So you have to be very careful how you use it, but at the same time, it is faster in many ways. Right, so that's it for tender strategy. The last we have some other things after this as well, but the last thing is the procurement mechanism. There are three main types of procurement mechanisms. The traditional, which we use here substantially, design build, which is really used here, and construction management, which of course which also is really used. So we want to examine the three of them just very quickly, because we'll examine the traditional one a little longer, because that's the one we use, and just quickly go over design build and construction management. The traditional method really is about designing the work before you go out to tender. So the design, you see the owner, which in the case of the ministry would be our client ministry or our engineering boys who do civils. the owner will decide what is required, and the designer will listen to the owner and try and satisfy his needs. And then the designer will prepare documents, drawing specifications and pricing documents, go out to the general contractor, who will employ subcontractors and his own workforces to carry out the works. You see the number of links here: contractual and functional. Contractual is the bold line, the dotted line is the functional, in other words, how you deal with them. Yeah? Simple? That's how we generally go. This is the org chart for the traditional method. Design build is a lot simpler, because the employer employs an employer's agent, sometimes a QS, and states his need. The employer's agent could be an architect or even a marketing man, and they decide what the terms of reference or brief is. What do they want? They put a document together. What do they want? And they give it to a design build contractor, who employs subcontractors and builds the building or the structure. The management or construction management mechanism is where you hire a project manager or construction manager, and they hire separately design teams and in procurement teams and construction teams. So, for example, you can look at this in several ways. You can, if say for example you have a building, you can hire a contractor to do the structure. You can hire another contractor to do the finishings. You can hire another one to do the elevator. There's no direct link between all these contractors. You hire them, but somebody's got to coordinate between them. So you have to hire a construction manager. Yeah. So that's a little tricky. So you can see there that you're going to get into issues of coordination. Issues will be rampant. So it's a little tricky to use in complex projects. So this is a traditional showing of risk and issues with regard to the comparison between the three different procurement mechanisms. The criteria on the left-hand column is time, cost, quality, and then it shows what type of projects they're usually used on, and the big risks. So in traditional, you can see there cost and quality at the expense of time. You can see why Ministry of Works projects usually do not finish on time. Because time is, right? Time is number 3, the last one in traditional. If you look on the traditional column there, time is the worst affected. Cost, not so bad, not so good, and quality, right? And then you have design build, quality 3. Design build usually gives very poor quality. That's why it's used primarily on very industrial projects where aesthetics and finish and level of quality is not that great an issue. Okay? Whereas it's not that fast either. Okay? But it's faster than traditional. And then management. Well, of course, in management, it's a lot quicker because you start in the design. You can start construction during the design. Okay? Rather than finish the design in traditional, you finish the design and then you start construction. So in management, you can start the design, you can build the structure, design the structure, you design the rest of the stuff after, and then put it in. Of course, the cost in management is higher, and you're gonna pay for that. You're gonna pay for speeding up the process, and the quality. You do not necessarily get the best quality because what happens is Whereas in traditional, you know you're going to get quality because you design the thing and you take care to design the thing properly first. You're not going to get that quality in management because sometimes what you get is coordination issues between the finishings and the structure if you do the structure first. Yeah? So, I just want the last section is the contents of the tender documents. Sorry, the last section is the tendering procedures. And in these tendering procedures, we want to understand the contents of the tender documents as well as some other stuff. The letter of invitation, form of tender, instructions to tender, scope of works documents, drawings and specifications, terms and conditions of contract. Okay? So these are the documents that we use in the ministry. We will have all of those. Letter of invitation, you have to write a letter on behalf of the permanent secretary. And the form of tender, we have a form of tender, instructions to tender, the scope of works documents could be various types, we will look into that. And you of course have to have your drawing specifications that give the details of the scope. The terms and conditions of contracts are fairly standard in the ministry, and you all know it. The letter of invitation. This letter formalizes that the contractor is being invited to tender on the project. It also describes the project, confirms the return date, and the contract details for any queries that are raised. The form of tender. This is the form that the contractor signs and returns with their proposed tender in terms of both price and program. Some tenders may also include a different form of tender for alternative proposals. Yeah? You can have a different form of tender because you want a form of tender that is in accord with all that you have set out. If the contractor sees that he can do it a different way, you don't want him to tender a different way, you want him to tender on that way. If he has a different way, he can provide a separate alternative form of tender with these conditions, with certain conditions which are not part of your conditions. Yeah? What is important? I want you to show you, this is the typical form of tender opening paragraph. Notice the word offer here. Having examined the conditions of contract, specification and tender quantities and addenda numbers, whatever. Addenda are the things that go out during the tender, which we will come to. For the execution of the above named works on a lump sum basis, we the undersigned offer, notice the word offer, to execute and complete such works and remedy any defects therein in conformity with the conditions of contract, tender quantities and addenda for the sum of X dollars and cents, inclusive of value-added tax or such other sums may be ascertained in accordance with the said conditions. So you see here the word offer. That's a legal word. That creates your offer. If you write him a letter and say, I accept your offer, what do you have? Contract. You have a contract. So you can form the contract in two ways. You can form the contract by writing him a letter and say, I accept your offer. That's called a letter of acceptance. Or you can sign the contract. You can what you call execute the contract. So you have a signed contract document, which in effect is the contract. You can formalize the contract in a document. Yeah? But if you write a letter of acceptance to this, the court will say, well, you have a contract. Okay? There's offer, there's acceptance, and that's it. And the consideration is the money. Right? We also have in the tender documents, we have the instructions to tender. This sets out what is expected to be returned by the contractor, and by what date, the proposed scoring mechanism, if any applicable questionnaires, details for arranging site visits, right? Pre-tender site visits, and any tender queries, and how to deal with errors. Now this is just important just to note that this instruction to tender document should not be included in the contract documents. It's not necessary. There are cases, however, where it is necessary, where the contract is so complicated that it might be necessary to cite it as an appendix to the contract. The scope of works document, well, you have to know what types and importance. I want to just talk a little bit about that, digress a little bit, but you can have fixed price and reimbursable types. The types of documents are drawings. Sometimes there are cases which should not happen in the ministry, but there are cases where you go out with just drawings. That is a bit of a no-no in the ministry. Because you want to have a clear document of price, specifications, and bills of quantities or some pricing scope. So pricing format for the scope. The importance of scope documents are that they set up tenderers' pricing to be able to try to compare them on the same basis. If you don't have a proper scope, you want to make your tender evaluation and to select your contractor very easy. You want to be able to compare apples with apples and oranges to oranges, not apples to oranges. You want to be able to understand what they price for, and therefore to have a nice easy comparison. And therefore that is what the importance of the scope document. The scope document has to be very, very carefully reviewed once they are done and understood to go out before you go out to tender. The design team must carefully look at them, otherwise it will set itself up for failure and the comparisons, the tender evaluation will be a mess. And it will be easier if it is nice and clear. You want to also ensure as much fixed pricing as is possible. That in some cases that may not be possible. There are cases where you can't price something on a fixed price basis or lump sum basis. And you may have to use provisional sums or reimbursable, right? But whatever it is, the scope must be clear. Even how you price those items must be clear. The contractor must know what options he has to price issues that are under provisional sums and the like. Fixed price versus reimbursable prices. Prices are either lump sums or reimbursable. Methods of reimbursement include approximate quantities, schedule of rates, day work rates, provisional sums, PC sums, and cost plus. The object should be to minimize this reimbursable. You want to minimize this as much as possible, so a review of the scope must be done to minimize the amount of these items. You want to have firm and fixed quantities, not approximate, and the contractor's price should be as much as possible on firm and fixed quantities and a firm and fixed scope.
So, you're looking at order of declining risk or increasing risk? What are you considering that? Order of increasing risk or
you tell me.
Risk? I'm asking you.
No, you tell me. You're engineer.
I think cost plus is less risky.
Right, so let's deal with that.
Okay.
We look at that. We have after this slide. This is a quotation from the RCS guidance note that I thought was very apt. Bills of quantities were historically a typical tender document in the UK construction industry. In recent times, the popularity of BQs has reduced as more collaborative approaches to tendering have increased. The criticism of BQs is often that they can promote an us and them mentality, as the bills can only be carried out at the end of the design process and reduce the chances for contractor input. On the other hand, it can be argued that the BQs were historically the guard dog of the construction industry. Their production requires the project design to be analyzed and interrogated for accuracy and completeness before issue to tender. This results in a more competent and complete set of tender information. There is certainly truth in this statement, and a reduction in the quality of design information may be linked to the decline of BQs. I didn't say that. Right? I thought I was very apt. This will answer your question now. You can see here, the more reimbursable you get, the risk changes. So when you have a lump sum spec and drawings and bills of quantities, the contractor takes all the risk. The employer takes very little. Yeah?
Policy changes.
Well, that's a separate issue. Correct. That assumes that there are no changes. Assume that you've gone through a proper design process in traditional design, which is another story. That's maybe another lecture series. right? Because proper design, there's a guidance. The RCS has 2 guidance notes for that one, right? Which I'm not going through that today. Okay. So you can see there, that is the issue. Okay, the risk of the price moving up and down is much more reimbursable.
But the reimbursable comes with receipts, you know. The reimbursable means you have to show that you actually spend.
Yeah, but the contractor not taking any risk. Correct. You're not taking any risk. So whatever it costs him, you pay. You're not taking any risk. Whereas if he prices it at X dollars, he has to live or die by that price. Yeah?
No, but what if the risk is that because sometimes there are unforeseen circumstances, so you might end up spending more, but as long as you have your receipt to show that you spend extra amount, then you should be compensated for that. That's a real risk.
It's less risk. Yeah.
Less risk.
But you don't know what the productivity. I remember in Trinidad, the nice story I have is in Trinidad we had a case where this contractor went and did this owner decided to do a cost plus for his building in the heart of Port of Spain, right? Which as far as I'm concerned is madness. But anyway, he decided he wanted a cost plus because this thing about the contractor pricing the risk is too much. Well, what happened was that that was in 77, 78. It said 1977, that was in 1978. In 1977, a Trinidadian won Miss Universe, right? Edwin Penicum is young, a nice pretty girl won Miss Universe. She opened a boutique opposite the construction site. The owner complained, the men not working because all these beautiful women passing into the boutique. So, sorry, that was a wrong procurement procedure. wrong way to price the job, right? Okay. Having said that, that's a negative. I've been working in the oil and gas sector, and the oil and gas sector on the offshore platforms, they only do reimbursable. Why? That's because on the platform, you're living on an island. You're living effectively on an island. There are no beautiful women to pass. There's no way you can go and take a smoke because the oil platform you can't smoke, right? There's no way you can hang out. There's no bar. Well, there is a bar, but the bar only opens at certain times, and everything is controlled. So the productivity on the oil platforms is extremely high. They're well fed. So everybody knows where you are. Everybody knows if you're working or not. Everybody can see. So why do you have a fixed price? There's no need to have a fixed price. You're getting good productivity, right? There's no boutique opposite. All right. All right. The next part is the terms and conditions. Well, in the ministry we have the consultancy form, if it's consultant, or the minor works form, or the long form, or if it is a FIDIC, a bank project, it should be FIDIC usually. Right? I want to talk a little bit about tendering periods. A tender period depends on, anybody could answer? That's our interactive session. What does the tender period depend on? Complexity of the project. Anything else?
What about terms of the contract?
Terms of the contract, to some extent. Buildability.
Political considerations.
Political considerations. If you have an election around here. The type of tendering document. If it's a spec and drawing, a BQ, the primary advantage of a bill of quantities is that it shortens the tendering period. Okay? So if you have a proper bills of quantities or proper tendering document, you have a shorter bill, the contractor doesn't have to do the quantities. Okay? So let's look at it. Size of the project, complexity of the project, detail of scope, document, pricing, time of year, if it's around Christmas time, right? Easter, whatever, August, I find August terrible. Market conditions, right? If everybody's working, you're going to take longer. If people are hungry for work, it's going to take shorter. And whether single stage or two stage. In the Ministry of Public Works, the minimum tender period is 2 weeks, in accordance with our guidelines. I saw that when I was preparing. Right? We have to consider all factors in determining the tender period. Sorry. When there are program pressures on a project, it is not uncommon for the tendering period to be curtailed. This is a dangerous strategy.
I agree.
Because if tenders are not given enough time to properly consider and price the project, then the tender may be either artificially low due to the contractor missing important information, or artificially high if the contractor deems there to be too much risk attached to the project. Of course, that also depends on your scope document as well, and your specifications. Just wanted to say something about that. All right, really. So during tendering, so that was before tendering. So during tendering, we arrange site visits, we await queries, we issue addenda. The addenda changes the documents. We have to be very, very careful about issuing addenda. The design team must take into account all the factors, must produce proper specifications, and we must do it to order. Right, thank you. Excellent. I'm on time. Finish. Too many addenda indicates that the documents were not properly thought out, or that there's been changes from the client. You can also have pre-tender meetings as well as the site visits and pre-tender interviews. The method, time, and location of tender opening. So now you receive the tenders. These should have been detailed in the instructions to tender documents, and the tender sums must be read out from the form of tender only. If you see, this has happened twice, where people have read out in the tender board documents that are not the form of tender. If it's not on the form of tender, it is not an offer. It is not an offer. So you're accepting something that is not an offer. Right? And it must be the only form of tender that has been filled out and signed by the contractor. And the main documents requested from each contractor should be noted. When we evaluating tenders, we check the arithmetic and correct errors as detailed in the instructions. The instructions would tell you whether to accept, if you see an error, it will tell you to confirm the error, change the tender or not change the tender. In public tendering, you are not allowed to change the tender sum. You must contract based on that sum. You cannot contract based on another sum or the corrected tender. Right? If the tender is too far, you contact the tenderer and you say to the tenderer, do you stand by or do you withdraw? If the tendering process is a private one or negotiated, then obviously you can change the tender. If it's a public tender where the contractors are all present, you cannot change that because you are opening yourself to a lawsuit from the other tenderers who will say you are giving him a tender at a higher price or a lower price.
In cases where we say this is a unit rate tender, does that still apply?
Yes.
If you get the unit rates now, it's supposed to control.
Yes. Well, no. If it's a unit rate tender, then there's no tender. Then there may not be a tender sum. But once there's a tender sum, the contract must be based on that.